Hello. Thank you so much for taking the time out to listen. Today, the title of this message is on correcting those who are unspiritual. On correcting those who are unspiritual. There are those individuals who simply do not believe in things dealing with the spirit. They're okay with conversation about mind and body. But when it comes to spiritual things, anything that sounds a little bit like religion, anything that deals with a God, they shut down. Okay? But then some of these individuals end up having a serious situation that happens in their lives where they will be open to some communicating about the things of the Lord, such as prayer, going to the church, reading the Bible. Colleen Jennings, about 8 months ago, left a comment on this particular audio, The People God Has Kept for Himself. And in this audio, I talk about those individuals who God has appointed, anointed, what have you. Colleen leaves this comment: we need a crafty mind to some degree with people not seeking God. Now, let's stop right there. A crafty mind. A person who's clever, right? A person who's intelligent, a person who can think deeply. An individual who has been appointed to speak at a certain season to an individual or group of unbelievers. Or those who believe, but they are just not proactive when it comes to spiritual things. She goes on, those we love, patience, and prayer. These are the individuals who are chosen, who have a mission of some sort, who need to speak to the unspiritual or unbelievers for a particular time. But when they do it, they're doing it in love, patience, and of course they've prayed. She says going directly to correction isn't necessarily loving or effective. I agree. But there are some times where we do correct firmly. A parent speaking to a child, two adults having an intense discussion. And we know that pretty well, don't we? We've had people who may have been that way with us during times where, no, we don't need the firm correction right now. We need some love, patience, and prayer. So going directly to correction, as she says, isn't necessarily loving or effective. Knowing the difference between serving with a patient spirit or being codependent. And then she instructs, teach on that if called, please. So the time has come, 8 months later. Here we are. We've got to know the difference between when we're serving with that patient spirit that God has put upon us and when we're simply being codependent. And some folks need a refresher on codependency. And so let's talk about that. And then, of course, we're going to talk about patience, and we're also going to get into some scriptures. Codependency. When we look at it, just simply putting it in the search engine, here we have codependent relationships are a type of dysfunctional helping relationship. A dysfunctional helping relationship. Let's stay right there. What makes it dysfunctional? Because you're not really getting anywhere with this individual. If anything, you're enabling this person who's hurting. They say, I need a drink. You know they're an alcoholic, and so you give them a drink. They are addicted to smoking cigarettes, and you go and you purchase packs of cigarettes for them. You are helping them, so-called helping them, when you are badgering them about what they should and shouldn't do, and you're yelling and you're banging stuff around and you're using the silent treatment, and then somebody calls you on it and you say, I'm just helping, I just love them, I just care for them. Dysfunctional, right? Quick to correct somebody, check somebody, you're cursing at them, you're all up in their face, and then when confronted, I'm just helping. That's dysfunctional. Many of us have been exposed to this sort of thing. So these codependent relationships are a type of dysfunctional helping relationship where one person supports or enables another person's what? Addiction, poor mental health, immaturity. I wish you would stop acting immature, but then you turn around and you're buying all sorts of weird stuff for them to aid in their immaturity, or you are doing everything for them, but yet I'm helping. You're not helping when you're doing everything for somebody. Irresponsibility. Once again, supporting and enabling these sorts of things, or underachievement. Baby, you don't have to do that. I got that. And anyway, I'm going to go up to the school and I'm going to talk to that teacher because she giving you too much work. And anyway, you see what I mean? So this person is supporting or enabling addiction, poor mental health, immaturity, irresponsibility, or underachievement. Among the core characteristics of codependency, the most common theme is an excessive reliance on other people for approval and identity. And I will tell you that when you are excessively correcting, stand here, do this, don't say that. What does the Bible say about that? Well, God said this, and you're just constantly just on that person. There is this relying on them, whether overtly or covertly, for their approval, as well as you somehow attaching yourself or someone else attaching themselves onto you for identity. That's why we got some of these folks who have these mini me's for sons and daughters. Okay, we've got some other folks that got some pretty rocky relationships with parents because parents put this on them, this dysfunctional helping relationship. Some of these individuals, relatives, friends, they only help when it's convenient. And then if you ask them any other time for their aid, now they're going to throw up your addiction. They're going to talk about your mental inabilities. You're so this and that. They call you names. They'll bring up the fact that you're immature. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you're irresponsible with your money, but yet they're bailing you out all the time and then cursing at the same time. Oh, you're such an underachiever. You could be so much better. You could do so much better. You are so smart, but yet you're so stupid. And you see what I mean? A lot of foolishness goes on, and none of it sounds like Jesus, does it? All right, so then when we go further into codependency, there's the symptoms. And somebody needs to be checked on this. I know it hurts sometimes when you see yourself in some things while you were blaming everybody else, and then it turns out that you're the one that is doing a lot of the dysfunctional helping. The symptoms of codependency, according to Darlene Lancer on PsychoCentral or PsychCentral.com, codependency is characterized by a person belonging to a dysfunctional one-sided relationship where one person relies on the other for meeting nearly all of their emotional and self-esteem needs. It also describes a relationship that enables another person to maintain their irresponsible, addictive, or underachieving behavior. Do you expend all of your energy in meeting your partner's needs? And some of you have done this, and that's why you're divorced. Others have done this and have, unfortunately, been buried 6 feet deep. This is serious, folks. This isn't something to take lightly, okay? Do you feel trapped in your relationship? Are you the one that is constantly making sacrifices in your relationship? Then you may be in a codependent relationship. It feels one-sided, doesn't it? It may have once felt one-sided, but thank God some of you all are free, you see. The term codependency has been around for decades, so this isn't anything new under the sun, although it originally applied to spouses of alcoholics, first called co-alcoholics. Now, let's stop right there. What does this look like with the Christian? The Christian who is sold out for Jesus, but the Christian who's also a codependent. So we can get into the codependent Christian. The codependent Christian is going to sit up there and talk about you and your drinking, and you got a lot of nerve, and I'm so sick of this, and meanwhile gives that person some money to go and get so-called whatever they said that they're going to get, but you know that they're going to go get some alcohol. Okay? The person comes back with the bottle. I can't believe you. Oh, in the name of Jesus, you need to get this together, and blah, blah, blah. But you knew, you felt in your spirit that that person was going to go out and get the bottle. So why did you give them the money? You see, the love and the patience is out the window. I get it when some individuals are simply fed up with folks with substance addictions and mental health woes and irresponsible behaviors and immaturity. I get it. But if you are burnt out and can't take it any longer, then you are to direct that person or group to those who still have the love, the peace, and the patience and the compassion for folks who have some type of addiction or mental health woe or who are immature. Some of you all had to divorce because it got to be too much. It was a one-sided relationship, and you got tired of going to the Lord, confessing sin and repenting because you were harsh, because you were bold, because you cussed, because you fussed. Going back to Colleen Jennings' comment, this business of love, patience, and prayer, that works when the person isn't burnt out, when the person got the support system, when that individual who is correcting, teaching, leading, educating, what have you, sees that there is still a glimmer of hope, and that individual who is being taught is that willing participant, that willing student. But what we have are those individuals who get to a place where love, patience, and prayer go out the window, and so then they go directly to just what she's saying here. They go directly to correction, which she throws in isn't necessarily loving or effective. No, it's not, when a person, you can clearly see, is not getting the help, doesn't want the help. But we are often led to this, unfortunately, because one has thrown his or her hands up and said enough is enough. So when you get to this place of correcting and you're doing it to the point where you're wearing yourself out, you're wearing other people out, folks on the street are looking at you because you are freaking out on somebody, family members are saying you need to stop being so hard and all that, that's when you got to throw your hands up and say, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm done. I can't do it anymore, Lord Jesus. You know, my calling probably is way past due, expired on this individual. You can hear it sometimes in your voice. It's not loving. It's not effective. It's unkind. It's difficult. You may be emotional. You may be crying a lot about it. You cannot do it all by yourself. Those are all red flags. You can't do it any longer by yourself. Sometimes it's just in some people to just constantly have something to say, and they scare people off. Once again, you got to know the difference between serving with a patient spirit. Patience, let's go to that. Patience. What is the definition of patience? Some people need a refresher. The capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. That's the key right there. Once I got to a place where I said, okay, I'm starting to get angry, I'm starting to get upset with one of my children, I decided I was just going to walk away and get a breather. Then I came back later and I wanted to have the discussion. Then there was a time where I was feeling very angry, very upset. No, I didn't walk away. And no, I wasn't very loving and I wasn't very patient. Because the way I looked at it was I had already spent weeks and months being loving and patient, and I was tired of it. And so you get those moments where you lose it. Not in a crazy way where it's going, cause you to have some handcuffs, but there are those individuals who do. And this is why you got to recognize when you are losing patience so that you don't end up doing something that you later regret. The synonyms for patience, and you can look some of these up even in your Bible: forbearance, tolerance, restraint, self-restraint, resignation. Resignation is a good one in the sense that, let's say that you're working a job, right? and you give that resignation letter. That resignation letter that you're giving the employer, there's a lot said in it too. It's not always about the new opportunity for people. I've just exhausted patience with this organization. I've had enough. You all kept making promises. You kept telling us you were going to do A, B, and C for us. You never did. I'm starting to lose it. I'm starting to get angry with the customers or with the residents or with the guests or whoever you're serving. I'm tired. And so the resignation shows up, you see. But individuals that have been long on patience and they're still that way, they continue to accept, they continue to tolerate. But if it's in an abusive atmosphere or an abusive relationship, you are going to eventually be right here and getting angry and upset. You might pride yourself on patience now, but take it from me, as well as many others who have been in emotionally as well as physically abusive connections, whether with family or with an intimate partner. You do eventually get to this place. And when you get to this place, you hope and pray, you hope and pray that folks didn't see you lose it. You hope and pray that you don't end up going to jail. You hope and pray a lot of things. But the anger increases. It gets more and more nastier by the minute. And then you've got to make the decision. It doesn't make you a bad person for leaving. It doesn't make you a bad person for walking away. It doesn't make you a bad person for giving a resignation letter during a time where everybody else got a lot of patience and a lot of tolerance for certain people, places, and things. You're not a bad person. I'm going to say that again. You're not a bad person because you have exhausted your patience. Okay? So when we go over to codependency again, and we stopped at the alcoholics, right? And that one who's just upset and I'm bent out of shape and I can't take it. And I've told this man to stop using the substance, whatever it might be. It might not be alcohol. It might be drugs around the kids even. It might be drugs with the friends or what have you. And you've dealt with this for years and years and years. And you have been loving and patient and you've communicated and you've tried to get the necessary help. It's time to, once again, dismiss yourself from that connection, from that association, and allow that person to see the error of their ways. They may see and change, but they may not. The term codependency has been around for decades, although it originally applied to spouses of alcoholics, first called co-alcoholics. Researchers revealed that the characteristics of codependence were much more prevalent in the general population than had previously imagined. So we got a whole lot, right? A whole lot of codependence. In fact, they found that if you were raised in a dysfunctional family or had an ill parent, you could also be codependent. And this is so true. If you see that one parent is suffering much and that parent may have a mental illness or some kind of physical illness, and this sort of thing happened for many, many years, and you see how that other parent is taking on the burdens, and even when that person who is going through a lot is acting dysfunctional, they're making excuses for it. They're saying it's okay, it's all right, that's just how daddy is, or that's just how mama is, and what have you. And so you find yourself getting into these connections with various people, and you're doing the same thing, making excuses for their behavior, enabling, and once again, some of you all know the rest because you're doing it. Researchers also found that codependent symptoms got worse if left untreated, and that is once again very true. The good news is that they're reversible. So if you have noticed that you're that one that's constantly badgering, constantly getting on somebody, checking people, mean-spirited, and you just don't have the love or the patience any longer, chances are that you've got any one of these symptoms, and you're going to need to change, and change quickly when you deal with other people in the future. The following is a list of symptoms of codependency and being in a codependent relationship. You don't need to have them all to qualify as codependent. Once again, I know some people want the good news of, well, I don't have all of them, so therefore I'm not codependent. Let's read. Low self-esteem, feeling that you're not good enough or comparing yourself to others are signs of low self-esteem. So-and-so, she is there for her husband. She's always doing good things. I don't know if I can tolerate my husband because he's this, that, and the other, and blah, 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 blah. right? But then you do some things to aid him in continuing to be that mean-spirited, ugly person. You don't stand up for yourself. You whisper behind his back, or you're murmuring, or every now and again you speak up, but then he shuts you down real quick, fast, and in a hurry. Okay? So you walk around and you wish and you hope, and you're looking at social media and you're seeing other people all hugging and kissing and feeling good about themselves, and you don't. Okay? You may feel this way as a parent. I'm not good enough, while you're looking at other mothers and fathers and talking about how wonderful they are. And I wish I had children that would mind me and do well by me and all that. Codependent, here we go. The tricky thing about self-esteem is that some people think highly of themselves. So where you have somebody who turns around and they're talking negative about this one and that one and beating themselves up with low self-esteem, you got these other ones who puff themselves up. But it's a disguise, because deep down inside, no matter how much money and how much bragging on the children and the grandchildren or whoever else, they have low self-esteem while they accuse others of having that. These people feel unlovable or inadequate, especially if they are in relationships with partners or with their children, and their children are making them feel that way. Why? Because maybe there was a time where that parent did everything. Remember what we talked about, the codependent. It's a one-sided relationship with them. And even when you tell them, you don't have to do all of this. No, I'm going to do it. Okay, here we go. And then they turn right around and whisper about you and how you asked them for this, or you wanted that. And meanwhile, they made themselves available. There's some lying that goes on with some of these people as well. Underneath, usually hidden from consciousness, are feelings of shame, guilt, and perfectionism, often go along with low self-esteem. Codependent Christians, oh, they mean well. They really do, right? And I'm just trying to do the best that I possibly can, and I love Jesus, and I love you too. And there's so much that's wrapped up into it, but at the end of the day, these people are not happy people. Okay? Guilt and perfectionism often go along with low self-esteem. If everything is perfect, you don't feel bad about yourself. But oh, lo and behold, if it's imperfect, I don't know what I did for her to treat me this way. I don't know what he's doing to me. And meanwhile, you're not looking at all of the stuff that you're doing for, and how you're aiding and how you're helping people who have mental issues, or they just can't seem to do right, and you just keep running to their aid, and you're burnt out, and so you feel like you got to check them and correct them, and you fight with them, and you don't want to get outside help, and you make excuses, and this group don't work, and that person doesn't know what they're talking about, and so the burden falls back on you. Meanwhile, the Lord says that we're to cast our burdens onto him, right? Codependents don't do that. They think they're Superman and Superwoman. People pleasing, right? Oh, everybody's watching. That's why I'm doing all of these things for my evil, mean-spirited, whoever, whatever, right? Because I don't want people to think. People pleasing. It's fine to want to please someone you care about, but codependents usually don't think they have a choice. Saying no causes them anxiety. But you need to say no when he asks you to go out there and buy this and get this and do this. And you need to say no when you are upset and bitter and frustrated, or you're just having some downtime, and he or she is telling you, no, I need you to be here. I need you to do this. And you don't really want to do it. And what do people-pleasing people do? They do it anyway, even though they have an attitude about it, even though there's silent treatment and there's mean-spiritedness, or this person got a long history of abusing and using them, but yet they do it anyway. Some codependents have a hard time saying no to anyone, especially to their partners, right? The partners that got the money, the partners that dangle carrots over their heads, the partners that know how to isolate, manipulate, control. They go out of their way and sacrifice their own needs to accommodate other people. There's poor boundaries associated with codependents. They have blurry or weak boundaries. They're closed off. They're withdrawn, making it hard for other people to get close to them. They're reactive. Reactivity, right? A consequence of poor boundaries is that you react to everyone's thoughts and feelings. They're so sensitive. Some of you knew people like this, or you know people now like this. Or you may be that way. If someone says something you disagree with, what? You popping off. You getting upset. You're not being loving. You're not being patient. You're being defensive most of the time. You absorb their words because there's no boundary. They didn't really mean all of that. Oh, yes, they did. Or look at what you said or what you did to cause them to say, I don't need to look at that. I know I'm cutting her off. I can't stand her. I can't stand him. With a boundary, you'd realize it was just their opinion and it's not a reflection of you, and not feel threatened by disagreements. Right? They're not going to apologize either. Some of these people, they're not going to apologize for being defensive, for going after you, for cutting you down, for belittling you, for checking you about 10 or 15 times in one single conversation. And it all goes back to they didn't have boundaries. Boundaries are sort of an imaginary line between you and others. It divides up what's yours and somebody else's, and that applies not only to your body, money, and belongings, but also to your feelings, thoughts, and needs. That's especially where codependents get into trouble. Just give, no boundaries, right? Caretaking, another effect of poor boundaries is that if someone else has a problem, you want to help them to the point that you give up yourself. And I'm going to throw in, give up your money, give up your time. You just keep giving. And you just love when people say, oh, you're just such a loving, sweet, kind person. And meanwhile, behind closed doors, you going upside somebody's head, you cursing, you fussing, you acting like a fool. Some of you all, not all of you all. Some of you all, you're just witnesses to all of this. And the person wants to go there with you, and you put up your boundaries. You say, excuse me, codependent. You don't call them that. But codependent, excuse me, but you're not going there with me. You put yourself in this mess. I'm just here to observe and give you the truth. And you can get yourself out of it if you want. And they go, no, I'm going to stay here. I've been with this man for 20, 30, 40 plus years. I'm going to be here for these kids. I mean, they're not too bad. I'm just venting. No, you're just being a codependent. Control. Control helps codependents feel safe and secure. Everyone needs some control over events in their life. You wouldn't want to live in constant uncertainty and chaos, right? But for codependents, control limits their ability to take risks and share their feelings. Sometimes they have an addiction that either helps them loosen up, like alcoholism, or helps them hold their feelings down, like workaholism. Thank you for mentioning that. So they don't feel out of control. Codependents also need to control those close to them because they need other people to behave in a certain way to feel okay. So once some of you all, I'm going to use some of you who are free, once you said, I am not going to fall for this foolishness that this codependent is putting upon me, trying to get me to rely on them, to depend on them, to be controlled by them. I'm not going for it. That is when you were marked. The people-pleasing and the caretaking can be used to control and manipulate people, and that is what, unfortunately, some of these codependents do. Alternatively, codependents are bossy, right? You recognize them right away because they're telling everybody at the family event what to do, what to say. They're telling their daughters and sons, watch what you say, watch what you do. Don't be reaching out to this one. Don't be reaching out to that one. The codependent mother and father tends to raise codependent sons and daughters. So Miss Bossy, Miss In Control, Miss I don't need your help, Miss I got this, let them be. Don't argue. Let them be. You just safeguard your family as well as anybody else that's close to you. Alternatively, codependents are bossy and tell you what you should or shouldn't do. This is a violation of someone else's boundary. This is my boundary right here. I don't need you crossing over into my boundary to tell me about some things that I already got under control. But codependents insist on interjecting their opinions. Dysfunctional communication. Codependents have trouble when it comes to communicating their thoughts, feelings, and needs. This is why you get them yelling and screaming and attitudes and silent treatment. They can't communicate. You see? I'm going to skip some of this. You're afraid to be truthful because you don't want to upset someone else. Instead of saying, I don't like that, right? We got some codependents like this. You might pretend that it's okay or tell someone what to do. Why can't you just communicate honestly, right? You tell some folks, why can't you just tell me the truth? Why can't you just share? Why you gotta go behind my back, whisper, whisper, setting up all these consequences and all this other stuff? Obsessions. They have their obsessions. They can also become obsessed when they think they've made or might make a mistake, right? Sometimes you can lapse into fantasy about how you'd like things to be or about someone you love as a way to avoid the pain of the present. So I think about the past and how we used to talk and how we used to go here, there, and everywhere else, right? To hide the fact that right now, we're not on good terms. You got the codependents who do this, but you could pick up the phone, or you could send a message, smoke signal, or you could send an email, or you could communicate through a third party who is a peacemaker. But nope. We got some individuals who they refuse to do what's right. Dependency, codependents need other people to like them to feel okay about themselves. And so when you stop liking them, or when you stopped going along with the program or what have you, they found a new circle. They found some of these codependents are not only Christian, but they're narcissistic too. So they're narcissistic Christian codependents who they're self-absorbed, and they believe themselves to be holy and mighty and wonderful in the presence of other people, since you showed their true colors. And they didn't like that. So they write you off. Denial. One of the problems people face in getting help for codependency is that they're in denial about it, meaning that they don't face the problem. Right? Problems with intimacy. Oh, yes. Yes, we're going to go behind closed doors. By this, I'm not referring to sex, although sexual dysfunction often is a reflection of an intimacy problem, and some of them do have that. But listen to this. The writer says, I'm talking about being open and close with someone in an intimate relationship. A lot of times they don't have that. They don't have that. They pretend as if they do because, well, we communicated about going shopping. And we talked about this one and that one in the neighborhood. And, you know, we were over here and we did this and that together. And, you know, the conversation is very shallow. But when it comes to deep conversation, a lot of them don't have that. Some of them do, but a lot of them don't. Why? Because of the shame and weak boundaries. You might fear that you'll be judged, rejected, or left. This is what happens with some of them, so they don't get into those controversial topics. On the other hand, you may fear being smothered in a relationship and losing your autonomy. You might deny your need for closeness and feel that your partner wants too much of your time. Your partner complains that you're unavailable, but he or she is denying his or her need for separateness. Painful emotions. Codependency creates stress and leads to painful emotions. Shame and low self-esteem create anxiety and fear about being judged, rejected, or abandoned, making mistakes, being a failure, feeling trapped by being close or being alone. The other symptoms lead to feelings of anger and resentment, and a lot of our codependents are angry and resentful. They're also depressed, hopeless, and in despair. And how do I know that? Because I look at the audios and videos and I see who is looking at what. Okay? When the feelings are too much, you can feel numb. You can feel numb. I just don't have any feeling. I just don't have that love that I once had. Oftentimes I feel cold. Yeah, because you're in a one-sided relationship. You did everything for that man or for that woman. And other people saw something wasn't quite right. So I don't know. There's something different about her. I don't know. I just can't put my finger on it. She's so bossy, or he's so difficult, or, you know, it's always about what people say or what people think. But then she's cussing and fussing about all of what she does for folks. And then she's jumping up in people's faces and she's calling people names and she's looking for people to validate her. And yeah, you got a name for that one. She was a codependent or currently a codependent. And some of us were raised by people like this, lacking patience. Some of us were around people like this. We were influenced in some way. I remember an individual who I was left with on a regular basis when I was younger, who exhibited all of those codependent signs. and did not have patience after a while, because quite naturally she was exhausted from helping all of those individuals who were addicts around her, and they had all sorts of addictions. So I hope that I've covered this topic in showing you some information from those who are more knowledgeable, of course, than me, in addition to inserting my own personal experiences. Yes, we shouldn't be at times going in on folks without the love and without the patience and without the prayer. But I also wanted Miss Colleen to see the other side as well. Why at some point these individuals, including myself at times, get to a place where we just simply on fire because we've had enough of the excuse making. We've had enough of the attitude. We've had enough of the folks fighting up against us over every little itty bitty thing because they don't want the change. And so that's why I turn people over to support groups. I turn people over to the person who is offending them, who's creating the dissension to begin with. It's not me. It's that one you live with that you're mad at, but then you take it out on me. I redirect folks back to the source. Sometimes it's the evil within. The person hasn't gone through the deliverance ministry. The person hasn't gone to the church. The person hasn't gone to the doctor. The person hasn't got the necessary information on healthy eating and exercise. And so what do? They want that codependent to come and enable them. Can you give me the money for? Can you be there for me? Can you drive me around? Can you show up and watch me act like the narcissist? Can you validate me even though I'm the narcissist, or whatever else they're looking for? And when we refuse to do that, we become the enemy. We become marked. So God, he gives us a patient spirit for a while, for a long while. And then after that, we've got to distance ourselves. And we don't need to be codependents to do that. We just simply leave, right? We stop communicating. Thank you as always for listening. I want to though close out though, because I don't want to leave scripture out of this. So if you got a little more time, for some of you all who want to get into the scriptures, let us do that. So here I came across this particular one, James 2:12. I thought this was good because some of these codependents, they favor certain folks because they too have a codependent nature about them, or that they are very dependent or rely, or they are quiet and they just go along with whatever. The Bible warns us about favoring those individuals, okay, as well as just simply favoring folks in general, okay. For he who said, do not commit adultery, here's a good example, also said, do not murder. If you do not commit adultery, but do commit murder, you have become a lawbreaker, period, right? We got people in the family that I'm cool with him because, well, he did this, that, and the other. And so you're lenient with that person who lied, who connived, who cheated because maybe they did something for you. But that one who didn't do for you, who didn't allow you to aid them, to give them, to have that one-sided relationship, you don't like them so much. And then lo and behold, they did something very sinful, and now you are holding them accountable. Ooh, right? Speak and act as those who are going to be judged by the law that gives freedom. We got judges who we look at them in the courtroom or elsewhere, and they're very fair. They're not being biased. They don't have their favorites. They don't know people from a can of paint. I'm just looking at the law. I know you don't like me right now. I know you hate me. And so the law is set up, and God speaks to us at times about all sorts of things. So the codependent hears that he or she is not doing right by aiding folks who got the addictions, who are immature, who are irresponsible. And rather than just deal with the issue, reverse the codependency, he or she starts having their selective folk who is okay and all right and accepting them for what they do and how they do it. And so therefore they favor, okay? They favor those individuals. For judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who has not been merciful. And so the codependent, I gotta say this, is very judgmental, right, about these individuals who they're not very loving and kind and sweet and nice or whatever. And we have been guilty at times about this, not very merciful. So judgment shows up without mercy on us at times in our lives. Okay? I know it's a hard pill to swallow. I know that it might even be confusing to some people because the devil will mess with our minds a little bit to keep us from hearing the truth. But you gotta just get past all of that and hear it for what it is. Favoring folks that are okay and all right with the codependent behavior. Turning around, judging individuals based on what you agree, don't agree with, whatever, rather than being unbiased. Not showing any type of mercy. I mean, guilty as charged. This is what love looked like in Luke 4:18. The Spirit of the Lord is on me. If the Spirit of the Lord is on you, you don't exhibit codependent signs and impatience and all this other stuff, right? You know that you're right where you need to be because the Spirit of the Lord is on you. The Spirit of the Lord is on me because He has anointed me, and you've got to be anointed, appointed in order to deal with some of these folks. Some folks are dealing with people who they're not anointed or appointed to deal with because they lack patience, because they are unspiritual, because they are codependents. You can't tell me that a codependent was assigned to deal with this addictive behavior in someone. Without God, we are so flawed. We're so messy. The Spirit of the Lord is on me because He has anointed me to preach what? Good news to the poor. What's the good news? You can be free. What's the good news? You can be released. You can move on. You're a winner. You got folks that's going to validate you on the goodness of the Lord and what you've accomplished and what you are set out to do, right? When it's all in love and good and righteous. So you're preaching the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim deliverance to the captives, right? I understand you want to set some folks free, but you do it in such a way where they don't end up being so bitter and so angry, and I never ever want to go to church, and I never ever want to deal with the Lord or the people of the Lord. He has sent me to proclaim deliverance to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, right? Spiritually blind, I'm trying to show you the truth. I'm not going to cuss you out. I'm not going to act like a fool on the audio. I'm not going to go off the deep end. I just simply want you to see the light, right? And then when you don't see the light, I got to let you go. I can't keep holding your hand. To release the oppressed, and those individuals in these controlling relationships are oppressed. They may not see that, but we see it on the outside looking in. They are oppressed by their controllers, by their abusers, by the person who holds the purse strings. Okay? This is the truth. This is the truth. And those individuals who unfortunately exhibit this sort of behavior, they are the ones who thumb down. They are the ones who stalk on the internet. They are the ones who, what you say, what you do, trying to get a foothold, trying to, be that one to slow you down, to keep you from doing what God wants you to do. James 1:25, but the one who looks intently into the perfect law of freedom, notice freedom, and continues to do so, not being a forgetful hearer, but an effective doer, he will be blessed in what he does. You heard this. You know the truth. Don't forget it. Don't forget it. You'll get blessed. Yes, we can carry one another's burdens, according to Galatians 6:2. We can do that, right? And in this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. But we got some folks who, once again, narcissistic, codependent Christians who they're not only carrying burdens, but they're going and they're doing some really foul things with people's burdens, beating them over the head, killing their spirits, not holding them accountable, turning right around when nobody's looking and aiding them in the dysfunction. That is not helpful. That is not righteous. You've got more than enough Thank you as always for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen. Thank you, Miss Colleen Jennings, for bringing this to light. Blessings to you as well. And if you would like to check the description box of this audio, you will see some information on my books. I am an author, self-published, and you will also see ways to give. And I also have some ebook editions. I have these so that individuals can have privacy in reading some of the information, because hey, you don't want the codependent to see you reading a book about facing your foe or confronting the critics. You don't want the codependent critic to be all up in your face when you're reading She's Crazy, which is a book for battered men. And there's Say Goodbye to Dad. Those fatherless daughters and sons will take hold of this one. And Tell Me Mother You're Sorry. We've got some sons and daughters who simply are done with fighting with these codependent, narcissistic, and any other type of mothers, spiritual, unspiritual, biological, or not biological. So these are available for you. Thank you as always for just simply tuning in, and blessings to you.